So I put a link to a Jillian Michaels and a Michael Franzese in the media, speaking about organized crime, speaking about psychiatry, what it means if someone goes to a psychiatrist. They've been faking conversations with psychiatrists, people who've never even had conversations with psychiatrists. One's involved with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, uh, Latino games theme, Italian. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their lawyer, names next to their buildings, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, and while all tactically delusions wrought with interbranch switching names and sequences. WFSB, Connecticut Channel 3 News, attached me to fake conversations with themselves. In other words, you guys can't. You guys are little rat holes, blaming, calling people rats. You got faking conversations to your fake sides of issues, all sides of criminal and civil cases, and in the court next to the World Trade Center attack. What do you think about that? I have to beg you to get them on paper, interbranch, switching, forging names, fake conversations with me, fake ties to me and other people since I was a kid, before the World Trade Center attack. Former director of the FBI, I didn't even know his name yet. Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, a whole bunch of other countries, foreign and domestic military, including a Kuwaiti general, no, an American general. Clearer than day, recorded right through administrations. You guys have to hide and lie. Readings of statutes. Oh, well, that was written online, so the statute says this. You guys leave out exceptions on a mass scale. This breaching method. Forgiveness is because it shows. Bridget, what do you think witch trials are about? It's about the branches of government, criminally foreign influence, the difference of their roles with it, the overt criminal enterprises, the terrorist ones, the other countries share here and there with the campuses. But then further, as a database relation, identities of relativity to ourselves in layers, because this breaching method hides behind it at countries A through Z. Since before modern religions messengers were born. People want to hear people. The nature of debate contains quality aspects of nature that are criminally foreign influence and tactically delusions raw. Hyper criminally foreign influence. It's in other words, specifically to keep blame on A through Z, through A through Z, to keep out another name involved. There are proofs there's a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise that we need to counter as humanity, even if it's not standing. Its method is. It showed everyone how to use its method. Our founders' words are replaced or paste. That's the first and most principled gang, organized crime group. Only, and they're not even an organized crime group. They said for us to get the Constitution unabridged, it stands abridged. And hyper additionally, unabridged and hyper additionally, why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them. So you guys have nature debate, use the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. This breaching method employed use /s of difference /s. We have the same colorized, different colorized at the same time. Black pupils all see the whites of eyes. So interbranch attached me to fake conversations at the same time with the news. Think about that. This is collusion /s with the ground location /s roles. They had time collusions where people through time planting predicate acts into databases from off campuses, hyper additional collusions. And they'll tell you this. They're pretending because they want to keep subjects framed where they don't have the right to. How many deployments of the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie? As collusion /s to screen the hyper foreign rolls with names. And then it already was juxtaposed with a whole bunch of different countries shared on and off campuses as actually shared. Central Connecticut State University has a whole bunch of different countries involved with a whole bunch of different military from Wethersfield, all intercities involved with them, and with the people on my street involved with the wire crimes and the methods of the Wethersfield police, forging and switching names, and the people years ago involved with the intelligence families with increasingly involved. I can't get them on paper since before the World Trade Center attack. You got, in other words, and they attached me to fake conversations with doctors I never even had a conversation with. Increasingly, one's named Leahy. These are ones with the people in the prisons too, including if they're intelligence investigations. Though they're used remotely, criminally foreign influence. Show needs to hide how they've already used remotely. And it gives them means to show it, and it locks them in further better than perfect at countries A through Z. Suits and ties, counters, and exceptionalized collusions, identity theft, fraud, slander, styles, methods, actually recorded natures. That's manifest per nature itself, black pupils. By the way, too, beginning of the Old Testament says, only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together in the part before it. So don't give me that bullshit about God and all that shit like that. Get the fuck on paper, motherfuckers. I asked you about, I was in one Ninth Circuit Court as an observer right before the World Trade Center attack. Before the attack, it's recorded. Eric Burgess was affected to make requests to help from me, from people I didn't know the names of, but I knew the use of location / as what I was brought up to me from years before too. In other words, and I did that. But people forbid, and they jump in and change and fake what people say when there are real conversations. And they put their delusions that are clearer than day too, when the experts of the sciences' names individually grouped in together. In other words, so I shouldn't have to beg people to get them on paper, one name in sequence, get me off the fake conversation about the World Trade Center attack with child abusers, leaders, and kids when it was forced by that too. Connecticut's Channel 3 News. They have a whole bunch of people tied to Gail King, interstates, involved with them. The same ones, foreign and hyper foreign. So they don't have the sophistication to do this because of each age and nature of campus, and the difference of them was used. So every single one and the difference. And self-valued roles replacing with each age of nature, each age of human factual nature has proper as what is true always being projected to us by nature itself, that identity that shows us that if you have how we have black people's white survive, let eyes left out of the conversation about what slavery was about, and you have the slavery method, the breaching method that used that before America's founders were born, with slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies. In other words, you have it wrong. Exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs. And it measures and maintains, and already measured and maintained. But where it's measuring and maintaining, you know that and what it causes, blame on other things other than yourselves. Things that it causes. This breaching method, in other words, the proverbial devil, the proverbial shaitan. We're not supposed to agree on the name of it because we're supposed to come to the. In other words, they have already the possession of the campuses and the exceptions. Because the republic for which we stand and its campuses Marcia system comes with pantheism, which was led by the science, more probably and demonstrably, of the singular identity of hyper invisible but still discernible, and just as the parts of itself are distinct identities of hyper invisible but still discernible. And this is what we are discerning when we discern the identity of the body, of the complete identity, for example, of what a verb is. To discern this, we can discern how we need more than one. We need to appreciate more than one word for a verb, a present participle, a past participle, for example. They're grouped and coupled with an as the conduit and generation of the identity of the verb. And every identity, even of something made up, has this hyper volume science, inseparable from all parts of itself, finite, grouped, progressive, its way, and increasingly progressive. I say, meaning like it shows us its identity when we discern the identity in the value, the only increasing value of the seasons that are not even here now. And even if they never come here, it's only increasing. They are only increasing its value, and it's showing us its identity of relationship to itself, its complete identity of relationship to itself to an extent, equally with where and how it shows us, to an extent, its body as each subject with relativity / hyperrelativity to what is true, as what is true always too, or only variably true, and with relativity to exceptions and to exception nature, the way nature unabridged appreciates exceptions and exception nature. But we have not heard these words. But because there have been collusions, the breaching method showed them they have to hide their roles with predicate acts, with facts, methods, needs, nature, styles. For example, as you all have remained, leaving out black people's whites of eyes, leaving out the significance of it, the only increasing value of it, replacing, too, what our founders and what nature itself communicates. A human fact attribute nature breaching method is one of the things constantly true always, that the sum value of those breaching method laws that were entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies, more than 13, before America's founders were even born, sickly distinctly too, but also sickly non-distinctly. And rather than self-evaluate how syntactically and appreciation of how to overcome all that was causing, where everyone was non-distinctly the same victims of the same thing. That was his self-value with syntactic responses and non-responses were used remotely. And in defenses of that, increasingly self-valuing having been forced qualities, aspects of fact attribute nature, and fact attribute nature itself, criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence, criminal insidiousness nature / hyper-criminal insidiousness nature. I am not even a lawyer. Nature itself shows us its identity is why and how English is valuing the predicate as another name for a verb, a main verb, while it's the same identity the scientists share. Where, how, and why. The law's identity is really valuing a predicate act as means to discern the invisible but still discernible criminal insidiousness nature. But it too comes with / hypercriminal insidiousness nature. And I say it that way because there are three distinct identities of its complete identity. The identity of all space / existence. We are simultaneously supposed to and not supposed to agree about the name of the identity of all space / existence per a method of checking and of communication proper, of its quality of fact attribute nature, capable of overcoming criminal insidiousness / hypercriminal insidiousness with positive treatments and or negative treatments, and with differences treatments. No, babayaros sees. Now, if I say babayaros, I get to that. No words. I shouldn't have to beg to get to Connecticut. A whole bunch of people with Connecticut's New Britain Superior Court and Connecticut's District Court and Hartford courts have foreign and domestic military involved with the work criminal enterprises, private ones, and the other hate groups, what they call hate groups, that were those people personally involved with the interbranch. And they confessed and demonstrated since they were kids roles with predicate acts, with facts, methods, identity theft, fraud, slanders, as timed collusions with a whole bunch of different countries. In other words, and then they want to go to have debates and then bring things before courts where they were already shown by the breaching method as how they spoke for difference, their own and other people's differences. The breaching method was never left out of our own social interactions, too, by the way. Individually grouped and together, it's recorded how they were and are uses of the campuses with criminally foreign influence, tactically delusion draw, uses of their departments as actually manifest, exploited, being and having been self-valued, uses of themselves abridged, right where no one wanted that. and instead that's used as motivations to keep blame on other things, others are ourselves. Rolls with U/S also over that, rolls with that. Exploited there or at other places. In other words. So if we really pay attention to what goes on at the suburbs, let alone at the the suburban / urban, as Hartford is described, let alone at the urban, straight urban, like New York City. Now, where we make those simple distinctions, all natures of exceptions and exception nature, like there is wealth in New York City too, but we have not parsed the natures of wealth, and we have not parsed U/S, the difference of that too. We're to hide U/S, of the collusion. In other words, that's you can't be led by even the invisible but still discernible. Or nature shows us demonstrations of why not to be led by it is functional being, distinctly hyper invisible but still discernible. It is the identity of forever nature that has the present participle and the past participle about time / forever nature being about itself, the identity of all space / existence. Now, someone could say that's theory, but in other words, you guys keep changing and faking my short words. I shouldn't have to keep going forward. I shouldn't have to explain. You're dishonest when people explain. Weathersfield police attached me to fake conversations with themselves too, as a kid and then as an adult, and through the mail, and through the news too. At the same time, when I caught them forcing a proven principal child abuser, I recorded him and he confessed also with way worse, also digital and wire crime acts and methods. A whole bunch of police departments with the FBI and state police and forensics names when I was a kid and I was an adult. At the same time with news and the difference of their intelligence there are the ones next to them. Used remotely, criminally foreign influenced, involved with predicate acts with facts methods, clearer than day, like attaching me to fake conversations with WFSB, the Connecticut's Channel 3 News about the World Trade Center attack, lying about pretending it's an attack on them when I say that. No. All kinds of natures of behavior racketeering worse than war crimes. A bunch of people with the Institute living on the campus of Hartford Hospital and the houses and businesses next to them through time, involved with as names, also with their educators involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with them, federal evidence crimes, and with the people involved with wire and mail crimes, judges and doctors involved personally with judges and prosecutors, personally and professionally with their kids involved with predicate acts with them, identity theft, fraud, slanders, no, black pupils. Let nature show us about identity. Its identity relation to itself and the only increasing value of that. We have the countering bodies, people pretending passions and emotions against these sexual groups too. There are collusions with them and their doctors. They all run into high lipoaggressions at places with databases, all different ways, like especially with medical triages at hospitals. And the campus Institute of Living was founded on the campus of Hartford Hospital in 1822, with slavery still entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies. And they have tactically delusions wrought readings of American history because they have replaced how we were directed to understand how James Madison and the founders behind him, they directed us to refer to him singular as our founder. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to help them and to use that plan of James Madison's and to counter, extort, and to force at key locations help. But everyone could only do it to an extent, otherwise it would be discerned. They had to make everyone have other excuses for why and how they broke the syntactic laws, therefore the physical laws. Not just the international, not just of the internationally monitored conversations and groups and the companies in them. And overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, only capable of being per the nature of those laws. And the difference of it exploited at the campus database tied identities of relativity to ourselves too. Remember, that's hyper additional after there was already the database identity relativity to A through Z that no one wanted, including their country's names above locations, areas, and states that right through our founding that was entrenched. Our founders did not have free speech. And then even as a president, again, further as James Madison was our founder before George Washington was even agreed to help them and learn about that plan. And we're supposed to be honest about the extortion of George Washington. People prevent honesty because they could defend their criminally pointed, full of tactically delusions, raw takes on bullying and logic with American history. Oh, I think this because therefore that. Get out. Get them on paper. I shouldn't have to beg. The interstates, Connecticut has rules with the World Trade Center attack. The World Trade Center, there's spots next to it, including the court. And that's increasingly being used where they just change and fake what's actually recorded, increasingly, including the outcome in cases. And just faking the outcomes of case and what an outcome means. They're increasingly collusion with detail forsaken as where there's communications, racketeering, worse than war crimes, offensively pretending, I'll bring it to the courts. When did the courts stop having collusion? In other words, witch trials, even if they're made up, they're about the same thing that slavery laws were about. In other words, the difference of the collusion at the formal law voices, the private ones, the news at the same time, the insidiousness of A through Z only capable of being and or of sensing any body, including if the body is a majority of people, that would use short words proper with convictions, even if it's a country, a whole country. This breaching method stayed fluent right through the founding of our countries. It measures and maintains other communicators for James Madison and for our founders than they communicated. And it measures and maintains self-valued roles with that. And it measured and maintained exploitation /S of that. And what that caused and all that, blamed on other things, others ourselves. It perfected styles of humanity, self-value, right where they don't value. Non-distinctly, A through Z, being victims of this. This is really why there are the worst negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Hear that phrase, predicate act. Here, act in this context, discern it in this context relative to the value /value progression. Black pupils. We have other communicated for we have had other communicated for James Madison and our founders. The ones communicating it now are self-valuing that. They declassified this about the scientific value of the human fact nature breaching method. They did not want rules with it's not even debatable. The Constitution, they wanted us to get the Constitution unabridged and rights that are too numerous to have to list. And they wanted us to explain where and how there was the debate about slavery or non-slavery even entertained because of what was unfolding. While A through Z had already been and were being used remotely by another name involved. Including beginning with the beginning of the discernment of it begins with the discernment of the replacement of the replaced scientific value, true always. What caused and maintained what was the value of those laws? It was a human fact should be nature breaching method /S, because all the roles, even though not wanted, now they're roles. And including blaming other things, others ourselves for that and for what it cost. And or sensing for anyone who's not doing that, including if it's a majority of people as the body sensing. and accounting to it for, adapting to it properly syntactically, and including if it's every single person. Any grouping of countries that comes entertaining locations, areas, and states. Quality aspects of fact-cheaping nature itself as is, they can't help but being used remotely too. Some ways easier. And that only an individual could defend the order of the finite and could be forced to speak for those groups. Any grouping. Still get the same, distinctly a victim / hyper victim. There's no way to escape it without dealing simultaneously with how hyper additionally too we are identity the grounds, identity relationship to itself now through systems, tactical terror from its own actually positive onto itself. And actually appreciation of our resources, which is a word that helps us appreciate how every identity, like for example, taxes. It's their identity is greater than and more finite than their actual physically measurable body. So resources is a word. So these are and have been employed, all natures of positive treatments and negative treatments that would be in our defended syntactically. There were our employed roles to keep offensively any individual voice from defending the order of the finite, therefore, and or the nature of convictions with short words. I'm not even a lawyer. Lawyers all sides of criminal and civil cases. The branches of government, their difference. They'll work criminal enterprises, private ones. The other countries, about hundreds of countries, shared on and off campuses sick fakes together because they came through criminally forward influence, tactical delusions, raw campuses. Mass. We're gonna have to get them on paper. On and off the state of Connecticut corrections offices and the judicial branch offices. They have roles with all kinds of natures of organized crimes, all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes, with the people that are countering those things, and with the people that are in the nature of debate about things. The nature of debate contains quality aspects in nature, criminally foreign influence / hypercriminally foreign influence. We're going to learn natural laws, real black people. It is time. I'll see the whites of eyes. So please get New York City, get them on paper, one name in sequence. And I want a response for, in other words, these people brought people from other areas in the past to make fake exceptions to knowing me. With the people I don't know at all, like a Joshua Jillian, they had his name repeated to me by a Ray Collo and by a Mark Violet, involved with a whole bunch of people at and next to Harvard Hospital, and involved through time with planting predicate acts on my street, with Wethersfield police chiefs retired too, with the same house /S, involved with wire crimes with the various police departments, falsified police reports, and they increasingly use crime methods on a mass scale against Americans, putting charges with no writing, lying about what they think, about what's written in databases. They stack fake predicate acts with facts there. The differences of guilt, increasingly used to screen their roles with a whole bunch of different countries, the same people involved, and are hyper foreign. In other words, we can discern this because these are people also with the World Trade Center attack, Saudi Arabia, and too was forced to collusion, just like Americans were sickly distinctly to keep out sickly non-distinctly from being discerned. This keeps the defenses of people's names self-valued. You can't defend that and afford defenses of their names properly. Forgiveness is because there's a certain type of hyper unnatural imposition. It's only natural as criminal insidiousness nature, hyper criminal insidiousness nature, and as fact-cheaping nature that A through Z have upon themselves, including if they're a leader of people, including if they're grouping any grouping of countries. We can only address this by admitting it and by observing and by appreciating how it is functional. how there is a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible to an extent, /S, how that comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself and the only increasing value of that. 3 ways equally increasing as value as a part of how we, as a part of the list of ways to describe how we can discern this. And so how we can program with it. For example, but more World Trade Center predicate acts and leaders of the kids in elderly homes and veterans' homes are recorded, involved, and shopping centers and malls and next to them and the difference of it. Increasingly, people tied to Wethersfield mayors are involved with the names on the state of Connecticut corrections officers. Note that word corrections, black pupils. They're involved with all kinds of nature. See, this preaching method has them bring up words like drugs when there are criminally foreign influence, all kinds of natures of organized crime with claimed medicines and mixed with drugs. They all mark police forms. They have family members of those the same natures of courts involved with that, like probate courts, all the courts, because they have with the corrections officers, all kinds of putting fake things in databases, including at medical campuses where no one's going to look in the databases. The differences of how the agencies are used remotely and of the courts remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, individually grouped and together. That is consciously propagated by the breaching method that maintains self-cultivated roles. See, this is gotten away with by people changing and faking what people say with their short words and pretending they believe that there's integrity needed to be had, faith needed to be had in the branches of government. For example, relative to an styles, replacing what our founders communicated with nature communicates. Which trials are about. You look at what's simultaneously recorded. There were crazy slavery laws, sickly distinctly against everyone north and south, but slavery against black, northern colonies, southern colonies, through different countries, and internationally monitored conversations, and all that have been used remotely too. Specifically with the black and white, where we have the same color eyes, different color eyes, nature's communications and identity. That's where we can discern its body to an extent, its identity and relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. There's value in discerning how not humanity and not the fish invented why and how both fish and humanity have eyes that are almost, they look alike. They're distinct, but they're non-distinct. And they're simultaneous, but per that hyper simultaneous, per that identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. That shows us it is the complete identity of all space / existence. And it shows us that it is that distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously / hyper simultaneously for how it is functional being. A distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. Identity of hyper possession, inseparable from all things, even things made up, so even art. All aspects of art. It is the difference between the smallest finite detail that we could grapple with, one, or the order of the finite. The order of what is active. The order of what is grouped. Active or grouped. The order of what is progressive. Again, everything has its system, like why and how it shows us its body, showing us the value in the body of seasons that are not even here now. But it shows us that they're increasing value here. But we have been through systems with these values, abridged from the words of nature capable of defending the constant and of liberating at last, to then defend properly the Constitution unabridged, and why and how we have rights to too numerous to have to list them. And so, Police Chief Suntron is recorded involved with a Mazzucato Bakery in Hartford and where they are now. But where they are now, from years before that, involved also with a whole bunch of people tied to Jonathan Maiano and his educators. He's involved with that with sequence shifts, pretending he knew me before he did, with the people I don't know at all, like the Joshua Julian. And he's been planting evidences with people interstates involved with and next to campuses. There are proofs, and in other words, including medical campuses where they have psychiatry relative ways, tactically delusions raw and criminally foreign influence simultaneously, having been right through world wars too. No, you know, look again about their uses of passions and emotions regarding their differences or other people's differences and what they think about it. A through Z. Here at the knee boxing. Please get the Wethersfield. New Britain Superior Court has their Facebook page with the Facebook pages of Wethersfield Police, with the FBI involved with wire and mail crime methods, falsified police reports, fake conversations with me at the Wethersfield Police Station when I was a kid and then as an adult. People tied to these Mendez police and as them. These Mendez police involved with more roles with the principal upskirt nature, with other natures of organized crimes against kids and elderly, and there are proofs their roles with at or next to the veterans' homes the same way. Many pray boxings. Please get them on paper, one name and sequence. So the FBI has roles with more upskirt pictures on Twitter too, after the principal upskirt nature. And they have roles with it, forcing it, with the same ones involved with the New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page and Wethersfield Police. A Joshua Julian is also people recorded, confessed, and demonstrate, confirmed him involved also with a Joshua Schumack and people tied to them in my area involved with untimely deaths and confessions tied to that. And the confessions were affected to make it look like I knew the people. And like they probably took a picture of me standing next to that Robert Rodriguez years ago. For a real short time, I had no communications with him. In other words, then he's trying to make it look like other years later. And I had that confirmed on Facebook, among other things, with relative body dumping spots. See, increasingly, the state judicial branch offices has rules with people with the name Kalol and DeMorrow and their educators with sequence shifts, putting fake transcript, fake ties between kids, putting fake locations with kids on campus, filmed 24/7. Then, and when there are investigators in the future, kids missing, things like that, it looks like they're tied to people that they never even were tied to. They were around them. I never saw an Eric Burgess on the campus of Central Connecticut State University in my life. He's one of the ones involved with Dean Judd and his family members, involved with a whole bunch of people from UConn too, foreign and domestic military, involved with people all along, with intelligence all along Route 175 and Route 3, increasingly involved with United names, involved with predicate acts on my street, and ones with their educators, ones I didn't even have classes with, putting fake things, put fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. They put a neighbor of mine and a couple of my classes to make fake exceptions to cover up what I recorded them involved with before that. When they were trying to record things for years before that, that's recorded too by themselves. They recorded these things themselves. So I asked before the World Trade Center attack to get response for it. Now they're increasingly leaking roles with Hartford Court's family members at West Hartford locations, also with New Britain Superior Court's family members, with the ones in my area involved with wire crimes and Wethersfield Police forging and switching names, and the police department's intercities involved with them too, with predicate acts, identity theft, fraud, standards, all kinds of connected falsified police reports, and roles with those methods of putting, making confessions too, so they can put a whole different array of falsified police reports and narratives regarding the conversations with it, and then say they made mistakes and things like that, and no one knows what's in the database. They have predicate acts. They have sick methods and natures of organized crimes roles. I'm not even a lawyer. This breaching method showed the people who group things like criminal enterprises and terrorists. They have to hide things. and hide their collusion/s with groupings of humanity, not just wrong, but exactly the way the breaching method needs it wrong. And it's and nature's communications and our founders replaced all pace vaccines. Please get them on paper and make sure. Get me off the fake conversations with the psychiatrist. The one I went to, I barely had time to talk to him. He's talking about his kids and stuff like that. In other words, before the World Trade Center attack, these people get afraid. That's from former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his lawyer, too. And his co-defendants, like a Thaddeus Skabowski, involved with a whole bunch of people next to Fox Connecticut News with predicate acts, organized crimes, and a whole bunch of different countries with those same names, like the police that fake conversations with me, and had those are the ones that did it when I was a kid, like these Mendez police next to Hartford, Connecticut's Fox Connecticut News, also with the Wethersfield Police Department. There are roles also with more child abusers, leaders of kids, and with these differences brackets. These same ones are involved with sexual groups and locations next to the campuses, and that are involved with collusions with KKK theme, black theme counters to each other as collusions. They have all sides of criminal and civil cases, putting the same sequence shifts with the news at the same time, the same federal evidence as crimes, natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake motivations for it, to hide roles with other countries and names with the same ones. So, in other words, increasingly, people with the campuses and next to them are being and have been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw. Also, along the South Steen Highway, increasingly, people with tied to a demorals market, and as a demorals market, and people involved with the Jonathan Mayano. Also recorded, and there's ones with the name Delaferro involved with some probate court judges and other judges and their family members and the branches of government individually grouped and together, criminally foreign influence at town lines. And with people behind their backs that never even had campuses together, never even saw each other around campuses, acting as collusions with people putting fake things in databases and lying to the leaders of the kids about the students as their roles with all kinds of natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, and falsified police reports. That a whole bunch of brothers, I don't even know their name. I know two of their names: a Mike Delaferro and a Chris Delaferro. I don't know their father's name, but their father, mother, the other brothers they have, all along Route 3 and all along Route, of the South Steen Highway, and their roles with the names next to the campuses, planting identity theft, fraud, slavery, like next to Hartford Hospital, a whole bunch of people involved with and so they confessed and demonstrated, recorded. They have people with the name Spada involved with them, with my neighbors, the ones with the police departments, plural, who are forging and switching names, and with the Wethersfield police refusing to identify themselves and consciously pretending it's personal and lying about what they think. When I say that, pretend I'm saying bad things about police. I'm just saying what they brought up. They switching and forging names. They're influenced to make confessions too. Their roles with, not even know the extent of it. Their roles with at least two police chiefs retired, and intimate ties to them with the same house/S with the wire crimes with them, and with the falsified police reports, identity theft, frauds, time collusion with the other countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones. In other words, so we have they're just replacing what's recorded, and they're even replacing and faking digital evidences, and they even have female investigators of people's roles with child pornography and stuff like that, planting evidences. Then they can't go back and have before discerned the sick natures of roles with each age of campus, each age of fact-cheating nature, clearer than day. You guys are using what's debatable to hide what's not debatable. And when you have things that appear to not be debatable, you need to cover up your collusion/S too, because increasingly people with the corrections offices, like with the name Lance Cuddy, and people tied to a Lance Cuddy and a Dale O'Sullivan with Park Street, They have an identity theft, fraud, slander. They never had words of conversation with them over the phone too. They try to make they use that exception criminally foreign influence too. Daryl Sullivan, involved with the FBI and other agencies in foreign countries and criminal enterprises and more sexual and medical offenders of kids with Park Street campuses next to it, places next to it like that bar, that Lena's Pizza and the Tiki bar there, involved with the Daryl Sullivan and people that switch and forge names next to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. They have roles with the Daryl Sullivan and that Tiki place on Park Street, you know, and spots next to the campuses, involved through time, like with people with the news, planting evidences, and with the interbranch forging and switching names and refusing to get on paper through time, individually grouped and together, collusions recorded. You guys need to follow mandated law. Please get Judge Napolitano. Have them apologize to replacing the digital evidences and putting fake motivations and using the true ones dishonestly true. Because to an extent they don't know. That's because of how the breaching method used locations, areas, and states, and all natures of differences, including the differences of campuses A through Z, all ages and natures of them, including medical campuses and fire campuses, and their families are recorded having to run in at the last second and do roles with where they put chaos. All sides of they just fake audio and video at locations filmed 24/7, but they also put everyone around everyone as a fake, all putting the fake things, and they're just stealing people to fake and changed communications and ties to people. Increasingly, vaccines, in other words. New Britain Superior Court, Connecticut District Court, and Hartford courts had at West Hartford locations and Wethersfield locations collusion/S before the World Trade Center attack. And they've been using predicate acts methods that are recorded inter and intra cities, inter and intra campuses. And next to the difference of there or next to there exploited is manifest because of how there are. All that is used remotely. Names A through Z are used remotely. Measured and maintained. Communicating other for what nature communicates and for what our founders communicated. And self-value doing that and or sensing for the breaching method anyone who's not doing that, including if it is a majority of people, including if it is everyone. And that is adapted to. And those adaptations too are effectively used by the breaching method to keep other things, others, or selves blamed for it, for what it caused originally, and the adaptations to the attempted adaptations to that really, which we have to address at A through Z, locations A through Z. And as people A through Z, hyper additional vaccines, I teach those things belong.